Throughout time, roller coasters have come and gone. Only some become legends for their intensity and thrills. Each and every year, coaster fans like you venture to the parks, searching for that one special ride that stands out above the rest. You submitted your rankings, and now it's time to reveal the group of elite roller coasters that you have voted as the best of the best. COASTER-net Uncut is proud to present the 2025 Thrilling 32.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Thrilling 32. That's right, Andy. It's time for the first round of this year's Thrilling 32. Better late than never, as we always say around here.
I thought this was another pinball video with that machine behind you.
Yeah, that's right. How about it?
I thought this turned into a pinball station there for a second.
We have to get hours and views somehow, Andy.
Well, that's true. We got to hit 4,000 this year. So if you want to, if anyone out there just wants to run our videos back to back on loop, feel free to go ahead. But yes, we are actually.
There's at least one person on this call who does that already.
I don't.
Well,
so there you go.
Yeah, so here we are. We're gonna go through the first.
Are you the guy watching the Smoky Mountain River Rampage video on loop?
That one is not me. I can say that is not me. But whoever it is, good on you. I mean, that's
thank you.
Quite a fear one too, right?
Right. Okay, so we're actually here for a purpose this evening. I believe it's called the Thrilling 32.
That's right. Our normal nonsense to start the show, but we do have business to take care of. That's right.
Luckily, I don't remember anyone who was put into this tournament, so this is going to be all new for me.
Well, there you go. It's going to be like a second selection show with the first round right away. Yes. So over the last couple months, folks have been filling out their brackets for the Thrilling 32 this year. We did the selection show a couple months ago. At this point, we revealed the 32 wood, 32 steel coasters in their respective brackets, and you find folks have gone to Qualtrics and filled out your bracket forms. And tonight we start the process of whittling down the field. We'll go from 32 down to 16 in each bracket tonight. First wood, then steel, and half the field will be gone in each. And we'll keep going and eventually get down to our wood and steel champions a few shows from now, and also our bracket challenge champion, our defending champion, Mr. Adam the Beard Man, looking to defend his title, hopefully. But we'll get to that in a few shows. But tonight we've got to narrow the field from 32 to 16 in both the wood and steel brackets. So if you're keeping track at home, it's time to get your red pens out and your blue pens out and whatever color pens you'd like to write in your corrections, because you're going to have a lot of them.
Well, and hopefully you haven't lost the document and it didn't automatically delete on your system with the time span here. But yeah, so we always do the wood first, right?
Yeah, so we'll start with the wood, and what do you say we jump right into it? We'll get into it with the Cobb group, the Bill Cobb group. Our first matchup was Tonnerre Touzeus from Parc Astrix in France, going up against Gold Striker from California's Great America out in California. Andy, now the nice thing, we talked about this last year, the nice thing about doing this in Qualtrics is it gives us a lot more data, right? So we can look at what people did. 100, at least at the time of recording, I'm not going to close out the form until this show actually gets posted, but at the time of recording for all of these stats, everyone has picked Gold Striker.
Yeah, that's not a big shocker here. I think a lot of the, I'll be curious to see some of the matchups with the Qualtrics to see what people were really pouring over, but this was not one of them. I would have to say Gold Striker moving on, and maybe moving parks soon too.
Well, maybe we'll see how that goes, right? I mean, Gold Striker last year was number 6 compared to number 31 from Tonnerre to Zeus. So not a big surprise it is Gold Striker moving on to the second round here. No big shock there, I think. We'll see what the future holds for Gold Striker. It would be it would I know that you're not as big of a fan as I am and some others are, but it would be a darn shame to lose that ride. It's only 12 years old. It's really not that old. It's one of the newer GCIs and a darn good ride in many people's
And you would
opinion.
think even money would be just move it to Discovery Kingdom, right? Like it's
Well, yeah, especially since they don't. Well, the thing with yeah, I
they
don't know.
no, they
Discovery
have
Kingdom.
Joker, but they RMC'd that. They don't have a
They don't have a wood coaster now. The interesting thing is Discovery Kingdom has a bit of terrain to it, right? And
oh, does it?
Gold Striker is really was really done on like a big concrete slab. Like so
Yeah.
really any park that's flat, you could relocate Gold Striker to fairly easily. So it'll be
Didn't
interesting to
they
see.
announce they're taking out Flash over there too? Did they announce that? Was that one of the ones that they killed? The vertical, the weird
It
Flash?
might have been. Yeah, I think you're right. After they spent
Yeah,
all that money to repaint it and rebrand it.
yeah. So
But you know,
yes.
that's fine. All right. Well, why don't we move on to our next matchup here? And we've got the legend from Holiday World in Santa Claus, Indiana, going up against Shivering Timbers from
Hmm.
Michigan's Adventure in Muskegon, Michigan. This one, the folks a little bit more split on.
Hmm.
About a 2/3 to 1/3 ratio from the ballots in favor of Shivering Timbers here, actually.
Hmm.
So Shivering Timbers was the popular choice here by about a 2/3 margin. I don't know. So last year, Shivering Timbers was 17 and Legend was 20. So I suppose people are going off of the history there.
That's interesting because just my gut feeling, like I said, I've not really looked at any of this since the selection show. And my gut feeling was I feel like Legend is in a little bit of a renaissance. We've been saying that for years now.
I prefer Legend slightly, not by a great margin, but I do prefer Legend slightly.
Yeah, it's one of those things where and plus if I rank it as old Legend, it's even better. So
You love to bring up old Legend.
the only one in the world I think that's left talking about old Legend. The legend of old Legend,
I
as I
still,
say.
hey, Hollywood Nights. I still, when people talk about how great Legend is, it's like, yeah, but did you ride it before 2016?
Yeah, yeah. Okay, okay.
When the four corners of fun were the four corners of death?
God, that you thought you were gonna like seriously. How many times did we sit on that
You
ride?
think you're gonna die on the end of Legend
Yeah,
now?
yeah.
Like,
No, you have no idea. You have no idea. And then nobody would enter our damn row, so we couldn't get off the ride.
oh, that was really something back there in
That was
2015.
something.
10 years ago, that was.
Well, we've been doing this shit a long time, Danny.
I know we have. Um,
And so it kind of surprises me that 2/3 are going with Shivering Timbers. Maybe it's all the new track that they're putting on it. I might get up there this summer. Who
I
knows?
mean, Shivering Timbers has been coming back up, right? I mean, I moved it up after we went there a year or two ago. So I totally see that people may be going with the history here since Shivering Timbers was a little bit higher last year.
Yeah.
Um, but 2/3 of the people are wrong because it
Oh,
is the legend moving on to the second round here. So we've already got our first step upset, and we're only two
ooh,
matchups in.
ooh, that is not gonna make one Mike Flynn happy there. That's for sure. But let's see if we
No.
can make Jeff Goodman sad here on this next one.
We will see. We've got El Toro from Six Flags Great Adventure going up against Prowler from Worlds of Fun. And Andy, I think you and I are in agreement as to which of these two is the better ride. Unfortunately, let's see, what's the percentage here? Over 95% of the people
95% of the people,
have selected El Toro here. So
yeah.
people are predicting the incorrect choice here.
Yeah, it's okay. They're trying to be right
They're
and
trying
still
to
be
be right,
wrong.
not
Yeah.
right.
They're trying to
Exactly.
be
Yeah.
right, but be with the wrong choice.
They're trying to be correct and not sensible, I suppose,
And
right?
and I tend to agree with them. I don't see Prowler is just kind of like one of those rides that's kind of hated in this poll for some, not hated, but kind of disrespected is probably a better word in this poll. I
Yeah.
just don't understand the Prowler disrespect that's across the board that we see in a lot of these ballots. So yeah, I think El Toro here probably has the easy victory.
It is El Toro moving on to the next round, unfortunately. So Prowler, just for whatever reason, Prowler in this poll, I don't understand. I've never really understood it because the people who vote in this poll always have nice things to say about Prowler, and yet it was 23 last year. Doesn't look like it's made a big jump. So we're waiting for the year where Prowler will be like a top 10, top 12 ride, but I
Um,
don't think.
I've given up on that hope. I really have. But I have not given up on this next hope. The
That's right.
last hope of this particular bracket, and that is
That's
Ghost
right.
Rider, one of my favorite rides, and
Yeah.
Boulder Dash, one of my most lambasted rides that I've ever. I've never understood the Boulder Dash love. Um,
Boulder Dash over the years is uh, it does not seem to be the ride that it once was because I remember in the early 2010s having tremendous rides on Boulder Dash, the Boulder Dash that you always heard about back in the day, right? You know, the ride that was a top five, top
yeah,
three, top two wood coaster for some people. Some people had it as number one. Um, Ghost Rider and Knott's Berry Farm has had a resurgence ever since its refurbishment. 8 or 9 years ago. Boulder Dash at Lake Compounds, which is now part of the Herschend family, which would be
yes, why not?
interesting to see if the operations improve over there because Palace has run that place into an absolute hole in the ground, unfortunately. So hopefully Lake Compounds has a little bit of a renaissance here. But two-thirds of the people have picked Ghost Rider here. So a
Yeah.
lot of people in this contest are getting on the Ghost Rider bandwagon now, and they are starting to believe that Ghost Rider is here to stay in the top 10 area.
And are they correct?
They are correct. It
Oh,
is Ghost Rider. Now, last year, Ghost Rider was 12, Boulder Dash was 8. So this is yet the second time in just this
ooh,
region here where we've seen
a
two
shift.
coasters shift from last year's sequencing. So we've got Gold Striker going up against Legend next time, and we've got El Toro going up against Ghost Rider next time. So that should be a fun set of matchups here.
Interesting to see where it goes. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to the second group here in the wood bracket. It's the Herbert Schmeck group. Our first matchup to talk about here is the Raven from Holiday World going up against Q Cullen from Emerald Park in Ireland. So two rides that historically have been towards the bottom of the rankings over the years, and about 90% of the people picking Raven here, which I don't think is a terrible surprise, even though they've been very close. Last year, Raven 27, Q Cullen 30. So certainly in the range where they could flip flop, but not a lot of people predicting that here.
Yeah, and I feel like Q Cullen has always been at the bottom, sometimes in, sometimes out, always at the bottom. And Raven, kind of like that mid-tier ride where I feel like Raven's always going to be ranked better than Q Cullen just based on everything we know.
Yeah. Yeah, that does seem to make sense, and it is Raven moving on again. And congratulations on what your next matchup seems to be, because we've got the Voyage from Holiday World going up against this year's Thanks for Playing contestant, Thunderhead from Dollywood. I don't. There's really not much to talk about here.
No,
Thunderhead was 25 last year. Voyage has been winning this thing since 2017 on the wood side. Things continues to widen its lead. Let's just get it over with. The Voyage is moving on
yeah,
to the second round here. So we've got a Holiday World matchup between Raven and Voyage to look forward to in our next round. Okay.
yeah, that's not surprising at all.
No, that's not surprising at all. And nobody selected Thunderhead to win that. So good
Wise.
on you, folks. That was a good consensus there. Um, Okay, let's get to this next one because this next one's really interesting for a couple of reasons. We've got two European rides that
It's a real
have,
shock that you find this one interesting, Danny Miller. A real
well,
shock.
but it's interesting from a contest perspective because we've got Rutschebanen from Tivoli Gardens, which was number 15 last year, going up against Wodan Timber Coaster, which was number 14 last year.
Mm.
Wodan Timber Coaster from Europa Park. So right next to each other in last year's rankings. So you would think that the people would be pretty split, right? Because there's a small percentage separating those two.
Yeah.
If I look at the numbers from last year, we had 88.63 to 88.33. So very small margin between those two.
I'm going to say, though, that based on my constant bashing of Rutschbanen, and I believe that's the first time I ever pronounced it correctly. On
Without the
this
what the
program.
hell in the front.
Yeah. I think my bashing of it will make people vote for Wodan. Is that correct? Do more people select Wodan here?
Well, I got the old calculator out.
Oh,
83% have selected Wodan to win
okay.
this. So I think you might be onto something there.
I think my
Even if
constant
they're
bashing.
wrong, they don't want to be looked down upon any more than they already are by winning the
Exactly.
Euro margin.
Exactly. But
I think
people
that's what's I
but
think
people have already voted this right in. So just selecting Wodan.
well,
If
it's
you don't want to be wrong, stop putting it on your list.
it's a great ride, I have to say. It really is a great ride. And worthy of being in this contest. Moving on to the second round is Wodan Timber
Okay.
Coaster from Europa Park. So Rutschebanen,
So maybe
an,
they
an,
are putting it down on their list as well.
well, maybe I don't know. Maybe we'll see. Now it will remain to be seen where they ultimately ranked relative to each other and what the percentages are. But Wodan at least has not been leapfrogged by Rutschebanen here. Our last matchup in the Schmeck group is the Battle of Pennsylvania. We've got the Poor Man's Voyage Ravine Flyer 2 from Waldemere Park, which was number 19 last year, going up against the number 9 coaster from last year. That would be Phoenix from Knoebels Amusement Resort in Elysburg, Pennsylvania. Any chance that Ravine Flyer pulls an upset here, in your opinion?
No, but I will say that recently I have been stumbling over different coaster Twitter groups and uh, just different things with coast people posting coaster opinions. And there seems to be a small but very growing minority of people that believe that Twister is indeed the best ride at Knoebels,
It
not
it is
Phoenix.
a slowly growing but still ultimately minority, at least when you go by the polls, obviously,
Yeah.
because the various polls out there all have Phoenix higher. It is a travesty of justice that Twister is not in the Thrilling 32. I
Yes.
don't understand why, because quite frankly, of that minority that thinks Twister is the better ride, a lot of those people vote in this poll.
Yeah.
So it's not shocking to me that Phoenix is higher than Twister. It is shocking to me that Twister is not at least in the Thrilling
Yeah.
32. I don't understand it. It doesn't make sense to me. It was number 33 last year, was the first ride out. We'll see where it ends up being this year. Does not make any sense to me at all.
No, because it is a good ride. It's a really good wood coaster. It's a big wood
I,
coaster.
I've I have I have continued to move Twister up in my rankings, and Twister is now actually in my top 10.
Yeah, and they keep doing work on it too. Like it's not like it's a rough ride.
Tremendous.
They keep retracking stuff. It's a fine ride, and I don't know
Rode
like
them
whereas
both
like
on opening weekend a
Phoenix.
couple weekends ago, and Twister is just tremendous. They
Yeah,
both are, but
and
Twister
Phoenix is
is
a good
behind
ride, but
them.
I just like to me Twister is more fun than Phoenix at some point. I don't know what happened, but whatever. So let's see.
Well,
So in this matchup, I don't even know what we're talking about. Oh yeah, Phoenix wins. That's right.
yep, and 92% of the people picking Phoenix here, and they are correct. Phoenix is moving on, so we'll have Raven versus Voyage and Wodan versus Phoenix in the next round in the Schmeck group. Okay, let's move on to the Vernon Keenan group. This is where we see the Coney Island Cyclone from Luna Park, there, Coney Island, going up against Wildfire from Kolmården in Sweden. 100% of the people, as of this recording, have picked Wildfire to move on. Any surprise there? That last year's number two.
No, not at all. But I still think Coney Island Cyclone is probably the better ride.
Well, well, that makes at least one person that thinks
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
Yes, it is Wildfire moving on. No big surprise here. Wildfire took a pretty good shot at Voyage last year. Ultimately, did not do it, but did come in at number two. We'll see where it ends up this year, but it's moving on to the second round, and it will face the winner of the Battle of Texas. We've got Boardwalk Bullet from Kima Boardwalk, which was number 21 last year, going up against Texas Stingray from SeaWorld San Antonio, which was number 26 last year. So not a huge gap between those two rides. And as far as the Qualtrics data goes, a slight edge to Boardwalk Bullet. So people going with the data here about, well, not really slight, 70% of the 71 per just under 71% going with Boardwalk Bullet over Texas Stingray here. So people seem to be leaning heavily on the previous year's results in this one, it seems, because those rides were not that far apart.
Well, in Texas Stingray, I was pretty underwhelmed by. And I've heard a lot of good things about Boardwalk Bullet. I don't understand. Like, to me, Stingray, I think, is a little overranked in this poll. Like, it's a fun ride, but I don't think it's anything to write home about. Not top 32.
Yeah.
Not when you have rides like Twister looking from the outside in. Like that, there's no in no world is Texas Stingray better than Twister. Like, come on.
I, I think that's probably a pretty fair statement there.
Like, in no
Um,
world, anywhere, in any multiverse.
yeah. It is Boardwalk Bullet moving on once again here. So Boardwalk Bullet again outranks Texas Stingray. So Wildfire will go up against Boardwalk Bullet in the next round. Moving to the other side of the Keenan group, we've got Mystic Timbers from Kings Island going up against Renegade from Valley Fair. Now, this is an interesting one for a couple of reasons. So last year, Mystic Timbers was 13, Renegade was 11. So Renegade was actually higher than Mystic Timbers last year, and that is unusual. Most polls have Mystic Timbers higher. So our poll is a bit of an outlier in that sense, but Renegade has always done very well in this poll. And despite Renegade being higher last year, we still have 70% of people picking Mystic Timbers to beat Renegade this year. So this is one where I don't know if it's just the Kings Island fanboys coming out, if it's people who haven't ridden Renegade and realize that it's a really darn good ride, or if this is people just refusing to believe that this is how things are in this poll. I don't know.
They're still
Or
picking their
if people
favorite.
are really just like, this is one of those where they're really close and this is the one we're going to take the chance on because I
Yeah.
really like Mystic Timbers and I haven't ridden Renegade or whatever the logic there is. They're very different rides, but I think most people rank them in a similar tier.
Yeah, and I don't like I think Renegade's a really good ride. But I don't think Renegade is in this like Mystic Timbers is a step above in my opinion. Just a
I
step
th
above.
I think I have Mystic a little higher.
Yeah,
So
like I don't like the
it's
people would
been
be like, oh
forever
yeah,
since I've ridden Renegade.
like I feel like Mystic Timbers should win this, but Renegade has been going through this renaissance in this bowl. Like I
Mhm.
like you said, like it was higher last year. And I think people know Mystic Timbers better because of the name value of it, and they think that is going to move on because of that.
Yeah, they were separated by over a full percentage point last
Yeah.
year. So there
So it
was a
wasn't
little
even
bit of
that
a gap
close.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So moving on this year though
Mm.
is Renegade once again. So
Oh,
Renegade knocks off Mystic Timbers here. Renegade moving on to the second round.
that's gonna hurt some people's brackets.
Yeah, like I said, 70% of the people. So the people who selected Renegade and Shivering Timbers are not feeling very good right now.
No, no, not
And
at all.
there certainly is a cross section of people who did that. So those
Yeah.
people are not feeling very good right now. Um, let's move on to two rides outside of the United States, which Andy always loves to talk
Almost.
about.
Maybe.
We've
We
got
don't know yet.
we've got the coaster from Peony
Still working on
Playland
that
in
one.
Vancouver, going up against Balder from Liseberg in Sweden. Um, and
Not in Greenland, because if it was in Greenland, then it might be an American coaster, so we don't know.
Well, and maybe they would have gotten paid if they were in Greenland too.
Yeah.
88% of the people in the poll picking Balder to advance here, which I don't think is a terrible surprise given their ranking last year. Balder was 7, Coaster was 10.
Yeah.
So both top 10 rides last year. Balder was a little higher. Balder over the last couple years has come back up and sustained. So I don't think that's a terrible shock here, but I don't know. Coasters had those years where it's been like top 5, top 7, and then other years where it's just top 15. So I don't know what's your thought here?
I think with you guys writing Balder and so many people getting on Balder for the first time last year, I think that's a solid ranking from last year. And
Mhm.
I don't see a scenario where that falls to be not true. Unless a whole bunch of new people got onto Coaster somewhere, and went to, Vancouver. I feel like Balder's probably the better ride anyway.
Yeah, I rank Balder higher myself, and it is Balder moving on. So we will have Wildfire go up against Boardwalk Bullet and Renegade go up against Balder. So both Swedish wood coasters advance here in this group. Let's wrap up the final group of the wood bracket, the Larry Bill group. We've got Goliath from Six Flags Great America going up against a ride that is in the Thrilling 32 for the very first time this year. That is Megaphobia from Oakwood Theme Park, which we learned a couple months ago will be no more. News came out earlier this week that apparently some local resident in Wales has claimed that he's putting a group of people together to try and save Oakwood. But there's like nothing to substantiate that claim at the moment. So I would be thrilled if Oakwood. Well, I don't know about Oakwood. I would be thrilled if Megaphobia would be saved. The rest of the park can kind of go to pot, whatever.
Yeah.
But Megaphobia is tremendous for those of you who are. We'll talk about Rampage in a moment. But for those of you who are Rampage fans, Megaphobia is very, very similar. So you know, Megaphobia really feels like this is kind of the first year where we've got a really good ranking out of it. Goliath has always kind of been in the 20s. It was 22 last year. So the question is, do you think Megaphobia, that's kind of where Goliath has been for a while now. So the question is, do you think Megaphobia will be a top 20 coaster or better? And 2/3 of the people say no. They think Goliath will outrank Megaphobia.
Well, Goliath is one of those rides in this poll that never, once again, never has a whole lot of respect in this poll. So the problem is we don't have any ranking for Megaphobia at all.
Yeah.
So we have no idea where that's going to fall. One would assume it should be down towards the bottom, right? One would assume that.
Well, I think the way that I would have approached this myself, if I was looking at this, I would say, well, I know Megaphobia and Rampage have extremely similar layouts. And so I would be saying, okay, if I'm just going to assume all things are equal, which they may not be in like ridership and everything, right? I'm going to assume that Megaphobia is going to come in somewhere near Rampage, just based on critical thinking, how similar the layouts are and whatnot.
But
And
it's also not a new ride though.
it's not a new ride, but because you've got a lot of new riders, it I
Yeah.
don't, that's how maybe that's not the right approach.
Because the ride wasn't even in the top 50, but because of ridership, you don't know if there wasn't just enough riders to even give it a valid ranking.
Right. Right, and that's the tricky part here. And because Goliath was 22 last year, Rampage was 18. So if you use that logic and say, okay, I'm going to put Megaphobia up somewhere near Rampage, that doesn't really help you because they were so close.
No,
So
it's
it
still doesn't
feels
help.
like it doesn't get you any further to an answer.
Yeah, and I don't know. Like just having, because that's the thing is how many new people got on this to push it over. I'm assuming it's a ridership thing where there weren't enough riders. Now there are enough riders. So you almost have to treat it like a brand new coaster because this is going to be its first real ranking that we're going to
Mhm.
see. Um, yeah,
You
I
can
don't know.
probably be pretty sure that the ranking's not going to change much after this year, which is kind of
No, no. So once this one comes in, you're going to get an idea, a pretty good idea. I don't foresee a whole lot of new people, sneaking onto the ride while it's closed. Um,
hard enough to get on when the park was open.
right. So, and you said most people took Goliath. I think that's good money. I don't know.
Well, again, two-thirds of the people are incorrect. It is
Ooh,
Megaphobia. Thrills
really?
Beyond
I told
Fear.
you, Goliath is a much hated ride. Has Goliath ever won a match in this damn thing?
I don't know.
I don't think so. I
Maybe in
think
its
Goliath
first
is like the
year.
perennial loser of the
Yeah, I don't
Thrilling
know.
32 for no reason,
Yeah.
no good reason either.
It's like the ultimate average coaster in the Thrilling 32. It's
Yeah,
always there, never really does anything exciting. I don't
yeah,
know. It's kind of how Millennium Force has always been in this thing, which is
yeah,
funny because Millennium Force isn't even in the steel side this year. But
yeah,
um
yeah.
so
That's I don't.
anyways,
Yeah.
let's move on.
But in
We've
a
got
logo poll, Goliath would be very high in a logo poll. So
oh I can absolutely agree with that for sure. All right, so Megaphobia will face the winner of our next matchup, which is Troy from Toverland in the Netherlands, which was number 16 last year, going up against Rampage from Alabama Splash Adventure, which was number 18 last year. So another matchup where we put two rides that were very close to each other last year, at least in terms of numbers. However, in terms of percentages, 88.25 to 86.59. So actually
oh,
quite there was a tier break in between those two. So in terms of 18 versus 16, they were really close. But in terms of percentages, these two rides were actually farther apart than Mystic Timbers and Renegade, even though they were
oh.
only separated by two spots.
Well, in that case, I'd have to go with Troy. You
It,
sold me.
it, I convinced you, have I? Yeah, well, and 83% of the voters went with Troy as well here. So a lot of people are looking into that and saying, okay, you know what? Maybe Troy actually is the Rampage has kind of just slowly dropped little by little over the years,
Doesn't
right?
help that it's not open.
It doesn't help that it's not open. Recency bias is a thing. If
Yeah.
these polls indicate anything, recency bias is certainly a thing. And it is Troy moving on. So much to Andy's displeasure, we have an all Europe matchup coming in the
Yeah,
second
all of a
matchup.
sudden here, I almost had before this round, I almost had to become a Wood Coaster fan because there was a lot of American ride.
I was gonna say you've been relying on the wood bracket for a while to not have to talk about rides in Europe, and that's not really going very well.
Well, now we've hit a wall to say the least.
Well, all right, let's talk about a ride that Andy is happy to talk about. Outlaw Run from Silver Dollar City
Ooh.
going up against Joris and de Draak from Efteling in the Netherlands. One lonely soul has selected Joris and the Draak to win this
Oh,
one.
that poor man.
I'm not going to name names, but one lonely soul has elected to make that choice. Um,
It's a bold choice. Let's see if it
it's a
pays
bold
off.
choice, and it is a wrong choice. Outlaw Run is moving on to the next round here. Let's button up the first round of the wood bracket with Colossus from Heide Park in Germany going up against Lightning Rod from Dollywood and Pigeon Forge, Tennessee. Um, Lightning Rod has been kind of controversial here. About 80% of the people selecting it to move on here. Is it wood? Is it steel? I don't know. The lines have become so blurred. I almost don't even care at this point, but people are still ranking it in their wood rankings, so it's here. Any questions from your perspective on what's going to happen here?
I kind of want to pretend as if this should be a closer matchup, but then I kind of go back and say, no, this will not be a closer matchup. But I feel like it should be a closer matchup.
I
but
wish it
it's,
was closer than it actually has
yeah.
been in the past. Class was only 24 last year, so even if Lightning Rod does begin to drop, which it has a little bit, Outlaw Run and Wildfire have both passed it now. But it still hasn't dropped yet, at least not yet. We'll see if it does this year, but it is Lightning Rod moving on. So we'll have Megaphobia versus Troy and Outlaw Run versus Lightning Rod in our second round on the wood side. So, any final thoughts on the wood bracket before we jump on over to the varsity?
No, I think we've covered it in length. I think we did a pretty good job covering these brackets here. Yeah.
Yeah, I
I
think
don't
so.
know how many surprises we're gonna get out of here. I think a lot of the surprises may have passed us by. But seeing how people react and how those dominoes affect the rest of people's brackets should be kind of interesting. But I think most of the surprises might be gone here. I'm not quite sure. But just my
Yeah,
feeling, my gut is that I feel that we have gone through the surprise section.
yeah, we've had we had a lot of matchups of rides that were close to each other in last year's poll that we've now settled. So I think the cream is going to rise to the top here pretty darn quickly on the wood side. On the other hand, on the steel side, let's jump into that now. We've got a
Holy
lot of
hell.
business
Oh,
to
I
take care
forgot.
of.
I can't pronounce any of these rides.
I know. So our first matchup is Helix from Liseberg in Sweden going up against Terran from Phantasialand in Germany. Let's take a look at last year's poll. We had Helix was at number 12. Terran had quite a bit of a drop last year, was down at 25. And people have taken that to heart, it seems, because the majority of people have picked Helix, only 58%. So we have a 58-42 split here, but more people picking Helix than Terran, and I feel like 3 years ago that would not have been the choice.
No, and has there been a ranking of a ride that has shifted so greatly more than Terran? That Terran at one point, people were saying it was one of the greatest rides in the world. I think there was one time in the poll we had a few ballots come in and Terran was going to win the whole thing all of a sudden, like out
Yeah.
of nowhere.
I
Um,
I feel like I feel like there's a couple things that influence that, in my opinion. I think more people have ridden Helix, which I think is the better ride. I think Velocicoaster opened,
yeah.
which does a lot of the same stuff that Terran does, better. And selfishly, I'd like to say that Taiga has influenced that a little bit as well, because Taiga
I think
is
you're missing the glaring reason of people simply just overrank Terran to begin with.
yes,
Like
and I think people have more fairly ranked it now because they realized that they were overranking it for years.
or those people still rank it in the same place and more people have ridden it and have said, no, you guys are idiots, it should not be ranked like this. Like
No, I think that's very,
the
very fair.
real critical thinkers have come in and said, no, this is a proper ranking. And that's where I think that's the perspective we need to put a lot of these rides in, that you
Mhm.
get the first few people in, and we've talked about this a lot, they have to justify the plane ticket and the ticket price to walk in the joint, and all of a sudden they're overranking stuff left and right. And there's no more perfect example of that than staring us in the face here of Terran.
Yeah, and I think critical thinking, if you were to watch videos, I think you might deduce that Helix is the better ride. I
And
mean, it's
I've never been sold on Terran. When people would show me the videos of Terran, I looked at them and I said, "What are you guys talking about? The
it's
ride
it's
looks slow. That
it's a
anytime that
really good ride. Helix is the better ride.
anytime you watch a video of Terran that looked fast is because they dropped the camera down to the
Track
rails
level, yeah.
almost. Like that was the only time the ride looked fast. If you looked at any other point of view, it felt slow, and it looks like a fine ride, but not Helix always looked pretty good. Like even and
Yeah.
then Helix went through a phase where people were ranking that down low for some reason. I don't know. Might be Europeans in general is the problem.
Well, it could be. We should ask our resident European about
Yeah.
that. See what he thinks.
See,
Um,
Alex, are you the problem?
well, I don't know. I don't know. We'll have to ask him what his thoughts are on that.
Yeah.
All right. So moving on to the second round, here is Helix from Lisaberg. So Helix knocks off Terran. Thanks for playing. And the reward is you get to play another Intamin multi-launch
There you go.
multi-launch question mark in some cases here. We've got Tutatis from Parc Astrix in France going up against Maverick from Cedar Point in Sandusky, Ohio, of course. Now, this is weird because last year we had Maverick at 14. Tutatis was a new ride last year at number 44. So we know that Tutatis has come up quite a bit, right? We
The
already
flavor of the month.
well, I know. That's where that's we've talked about the t-shirts and everything, right? That's like the
Yep.
t-shirt. It's like the t-shirt to wear this year. I don't know what
Yep.
it is. So in terms of voting, 75% of people have selected Maverick here. Which I'm surprised it's not a little bit more for the people going if they're trying to go for the European bias, but I mean, Maverick has been pretty darn good too in recent years.
Anyone who selected Maverick hasn't looked at the t-shirts. We told you guys, look at the t-shirts.
We warned
Look
you
at the
that this was
t-shirts.
happening.
I don't even need to click on to the next level of my PowerPoint slide to know who won this match already. Because I already saw the t-shirts.
You saw the t-shirts that
I
tell
saw
you
that. That's all I needed to know. That Tutatis is the new flavor of the month, and it could have
the
been
new
going up against
Terran.
any ride, and it would have won in this tournament.
Well, Andy, you'll be happy to know that hopefully about 2 months from now, or a little more than 2 months from now, I will have the Tutatis credit and will
Oh,
have
thank
it
God.
ranked properly, or not. Who
Well,
knows?
well,
Or not. Um,
well.
but for now,
We'll
it
come
is
close.
Tutatis
Proper.
moving
We'll come a
on.
little bit closer. I'm not going to say we'll have it ranked properly. We'll come
Okay,
a
well,
little
maybe
bit
it'll be
closer to what
closer.
we have.
But for now, you have to deal with a ride from France beating Cedar Point's Maverick because
Yep.
Tutatis is the ride. Moving on here, we'll get Helix versus Tutatis in the second
Did you
round.
not see the t-shirts, people? Did you not see the t-shirts?
Andy warned you that this was happening, folks. I don't know what to say.
Did you not see the t-shirts?
Okay. Next matchup, we've got the Flying Dinosaur from Universal Studios Japan going up against Nemesis from Alton Towers in England. Now, another interesting one here. We've got the refurbishment on the Nemesis side going on here. You know, the track replacement, the repaint, the retheme, sort of all of that. And 70% of the folks selected Nemesis here.
Really?
Last year, Nemesis was 26, Flying Dinosaur was 30. So, Nemesis seems to have already had a little bit of an edge. Not by a lot of points, though. Nemesis 96.30, and Flying Dinosaur was 95.68. So you're a little more than a half a percentage point, which isn't insignificant on the steel side, but still enough that they could shift, especially with, maybe you heard people back in the spring saying that they weren't maybe a fan of the new Nemesis track and that it didn't have quite the same feel. I, for one, completely disagree. I think Nemesis felt exactly the same as it did from its original form. And I think the new paint job looks pretty darn cool, and the new theme is pretty darn cool too. So,
Well, and the thing with Flying Dino too is that I feel that Flying Dino is constantly on that borderline of having enough writers, not having enough writers. If one or two people don't vote this year, all of a sudden Flying Dino's ranking is completely different. Um, I kind of want to say everything I've seen, I don't know. I kind of want to say Flying Dino might be the better ride. Like it's the most unique of all the flying coasters.
it
Everyone who's
is.
ridden it says it's really good.
Yep.
Um, like I feel like it's a rider issue more than a ranking issue.
It
I don't
does
know.
seem to be a consistency thing, right?
It does seem because it drops in and out. And that's the only way I know that is we those Japanese coasters. There's you know we haven't seen, like you guys, like you haven't gone there yet. Your crew hasn't gone there yet.
Right.
So it's kind of like with this poll and the people who are voted, we have a lot of people who have been on it. Um, Dason just got on it. And I forgot what he said. He wasn't like raving about it though, which kind of surprised me because I thought he would be. Um,
Oh.
I don't know. Let's see. I don't know.
Yeah, so moving on to the second round in the Wardley group is Nemesis. Nemesis Reborn knocks off Flying Dinosaur, so we will see Nemesis in the second round. And to finish off the Wardley group, we've got the defending champion Steel Vengeance from Cedar Point, playing against the Steel Brackets. Thanks for coming, contestant Pantherian,
Yeah.
formerly Project 305, formerly Intimidator 305 from King's Dominion. Which Intimidator 305, as it was in last year's polls, number 21, compared to Steel Vengeance, which has been number one now for quite a while, save 1 year where Velocicoaster pulled off the upset in its first year. And no big surprise here. I'm not even going to ask.
Yeah.
Let's see. Is there anybody I need to have a talking to? No, everybody selected Steel Vengeance. Good job, folks. Steel Vengeance moving on. So we have Helix versus Tutatis and Nemesis going up against Steel Vengeance in the second round of the Wardley group. Shall we move right along to our RMC, except for one region here,
Right.
the Joe Draves group? We've got Iron Gwazi from Busch Gardens, Tampa, going up against Iron Rattler from Six Flags Fiesta, Texas. Iron Rattler has finally started to seem to fall here. It was number 28 last year to Iron Gwazi's number 7. Iron
Yeah.
Gwazi never really had that pinnacle
No.
premiere that a lot of people were expecting. So I don't know if some people are holding out hope here, but everybody so far, as of recording here, selected Iron Gwazi. So nobody giving Iron Rattler any bit of a chance here. What do you think about that?
That is not surprising. Iron Rattler is one of those old RMCs that it was
They're
good for its
passe.
time and is still a very good ride, but other rides have passed it by.
Yeah. Yeah, it is Iron Gwazi moving on here, knocks off Iron Rattler. Not a huge surprise there based on the history and the trends. Another one here, we've got Twisted Timbers from King's Dominion going up against Untamed from Wallaby Holland. Twisted Timbers, again, a ride that debuted, did very, very well in its debut year, has slowly fallen down the rankings, was number 22 last year, and Untamed has remained very strong here, was number 4 last year. Still remaining a top 5 ride in this poll, over its first several years now. In terms of votes, two lonely people picking Twisted
Ooh.
Timbers to advance, everybody else going with Untamed here. Any chance for an upset here, or we're seeing Untamed?
No, not with Untamed. Not with that ride.
All right. Yeah, it's Untamed. Moving on. So we will get Iron Rattler versus Untamed, which is to me is not a slam dunk. With the way that some of these RMCs have
No,
slowly gone down. Iron Gwazi, Untamed, to me, that is not a slam dunk for Untamed in any sense of the word.
no, and you just don't know with Iron Gwazi that at any given moment that could jump up a little bit with the way people talk about it. So
Yep.
if they ever figure out how to run the actual ride and not have 15-minute dispatches, maybe people wouldn't be super angry with the whole
Yeah.
experience.
No, I think that's a fair shout. All right. Now, let's move on to perhaps the most interesting matchup in the entire
Yeah.
steel bracket. We've got Voltron Nevera from Europa Park, the brand new coaster that opened this year there at Europa Park. Looks fantastic. Really, really excited to ride that later this summer. Going up against Wildcats Revenge from Hershey Park, a ride that's only a year old here and debuted at number 15 last year, which to me was a little bit of a surprise that it was that low. I think we expected a little bit better out of Wildcat, especially considering the things that people say about it and how high I personally have it. I think the fact that it was closed here and there affected it a little bit. So Wildcat's Revenge being number 15 last year, maybe as more people wrote it, it moves up a little bit, maybe not. Who knows? The question is, where do you think Voltron is going to debut here? Because this is super interesting. Two rides that really are nothing alike. And that's part of the reason why it was interesting to put Voltron in this group is because it's so different than all these other RMCs and trying to fit a really unique ride that looks really, really darn good amongst all these RMCs, I thought was an interesting challenge. And people seem to have struggled with this because Andy, a 50-50 split
Oh,
amongst the submissions between Voltron and Wildcats. So half of the people are going to be upset with the result of this either way.
and I feel like Voltron is gonna have that first year bump here, and so many people have been raving about it. So many people have said that people just didn't have time to buy the T-shirts. I think is the issue.
Maybe they didn't have them.
They didn't have them yet, or they didn't at least get to the Hollywood Nights with them on. I don't know. But I feel like Voltron's going to be that next flavor of the month here, where I think a lot, like you said, the Jabroni Squad's going to get on it this summer. So I feel like a whole lot of people are going to get on this ride, and I feel like it's going to have that first year bump. And Wildcat, it's so strange because everyone raves about it, but we haven't seen the production out of it in this poll. Like, I know we only have one
Odd.
here.
Because people make the comparison to Iron Gwazi and to
Yeah,
Untamed. I make those comparisons, and I actually
yeah,
have it higher than both of those rides, and yet here it is in the middle of the pack.
yeah. And I think that's where the problem is, where it's not this overwhelmingly outstanding RMC that looks imposing, that's tall and has all these big maneuvers. It's low to the ground. It's a different concept. It's like
Maneuvers.
the Maverick of RMCs almost. Um,
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. This one's a toss up for me too. I might give it to the new coaster though over Wildcat. I am really interested to see where Wildcat ends up here.
Well, it is Voltron Nevera knocking off Wildcat's Revenge.
You might
So
have to buy me
Voltron,
a Voltron shirt when you go, just so I can
well,
fit in.
I will see if I can find maybe you can wear it to Hollywood Nights or something.
Yeah, well, might be too late. Might be too late.
Too cool for school, I guess. Anyways, let's move on to our final matchup here. We've got Lightning Rod from Dollywood, which in the Steel Pole last year was number 16, going up against the coaster that was number 13 last year. That would be Airy Force One from Fun Spot America Atlanta, which is actually in Fayetteville. You've driven by it multiple times and have
Yeah,
not ridden
I've
it.
never stopped.
You've never stopped to ride it. So,
No.
what do you think about this one? Because this is one, these two are very close to each other. People are going heavy on the Airy Force One pick here. Let's see. Math tells me 87% are going with Airy Force One here.
Well, one, I want to say Atlanta's a pain in the ass. So trying to get through Atlanta, not
That is
stopping.
entirely true. Nobody likes Atlanta.
Yeah, it's a pain in the ass to get through. So by the time we get through it, it's Air Force One's always on the wrong side of the way we're going. So when we're going down, we're usually going through rush hour traffic. I don't want to stop in that. Anyway, my issue here is not Atlanta, but rather Lightning Rod. And if you're going to consider Lightning Rod a steel coaster, I don't think it holds up anymore as a steel
It's not that
coaster.
great.
It's in compared to the other, even the other RMCs, like, yeah, it has the first drop is okay. It doesn't have a launch anymore, so you can't rank it based on that.
Yeah.
It has the
Most
nice
of the other rides in this group are better. If
yeah,
not all.
it has a nice wave turn. The quad down is the best part of the ride, no doubt. But even when
Area
you put
Force
it up
One is
against,
one of those too.
right? And even when you put up against like Iron Rattler, like actually I think Lightning Rod and Iron Rattler are very comparable to one another because
I agree.
they each have one really good element with a series of other pretty good elements and a few bad elements. And I feel like those two rides like match up perfectly, and I don't know how people are ranking Lightning Rod so high
Yeah.
Um, I don't feel like it does a whole lot very well anymore as a steel coaster. As a wood coaster, I think it still holds up a little
Yeah.
bit amongst the top group, but as a steel coaster, I don't know. So
No.
I would go with the group here and say Air Force One.
As Alex Baker says when he does his impression of you, it's just a bunch of maneuvers.
It's just a bunch of maneuvers. It's well, yeah, the quad down is really fantastic on Lightning Rod.
Yeah, it is.
You can take everything else in my book. Yeah, everything else you can get anywhere else. You can get on almost every RMC a wave turn of that. Like even Twisted Cyclone has I think a better wave turn than Lightning Rods.
Yeah, no. Yeah, I agree.
If you want to start comparing RMCs and Steel Coaster and Iron
If you want
Horse
to start
Drive,
comparing wave turns,
yeah, like if you want to do that, I would put Twisted Cyclone above Lightning Rod any day. It's the quad down. It's the one unique element on that ride that's really fantastic. I haven't been on it since they taken off the launch, so I don't know if it still is.
yeah,
Um,
I
you know
I
that
haven't either.
well, and that's the question mark that launch was giving you a little bit more speed over the top.
If
Um,
anything, it's gotten worse, right? Probably,
like it might have gotten smoother, but to me
but
the
not better.
smoothness, yeah, to me the smoothness was never the issue on that ride. Um,
No, I agree.
so I don't know. So I don't understand it. I'm gonna pick Air Force One.
It is Air Force One. Moving on. So in the Draves group, we'll have Iron Gwazi go up against Untamed, and then we'll have Voltron go up against Air Force One in our second round. Let's go to the mock group over here, and we start off
Oh
with
yeah.
Asian Aika from Fuji Q Highland in Japan going up against a new for this past year ride. We've got Hyperia from Thorpe Park, just outside of London in England. Um, you know, like I said, Hyperia was brand new, so no data point on it, and Asian Aika last year was number 19. So kind of right in the middle of the pack there. So the question is, if you again, you just work off the assumption maybe that Asian Ica is going to stay put right around the number 20 mark. Do you think Hyperia was able to beat that? And ooh, this is another one that was nearly a 50-50 split here. 57%, 43%. So pretty darn close. But the slight majority to Hyperia here.
And my issue is Hyperia is one of those rides that like I'm not sold by. And I'm not sold by the people who have already ridden it. Because some people said, "Oh yeah, it's a really good ride." Some people have been like, it's kind of in the middle." Where like you hear of Tutatis, you hear of Voltron, and there seems to be a rumbling there. There seems to be people talking highly of it and that consensus. I'm not sold by Hyperia even by what I've seen. Like I don't know. I don't get it. Um now
Hyperia is really weird because Hyperia is because of the name, right? You automatically want to compare it to all the other hypercoasters that
yeah,
exist. And when you do that, you get into this weird thing where, and we were talking about this while we were riding it. It's not like your B&M hypercoasters. It's not like your Intamin hypercoasters. It's really not like any other hypercoaster because it's kind of weird,
yeah.
right? And it's got the inversions. It's not really, it has really good air time and it has really good hang time, but it's not really built for either of those things. It's really weird because it's got hang time, but it's got inversions, it's got a couple of spots of airtime, it's got this weird drop where it goes in on itself. So it's in this weird category where you kind of want to compare it to rides like Helix and Tutatis and like maybe like Icon because they look similar in terms of some of the elements they do, but you also want to be comparing it to hypercoasters because of the height and speed aspect, but it really doesn't fit into either of those categories very well at all. And it's not really compact or I guess aggressive enough, at least from a visual standpoint, to really be compared to an RMC either. So it's in this weird category where you don't really have anything to really compare it to, at least on paper.
Well, and I'll say I think it's going to do well this year.
Hmm.
But if there was a coaster to drop out of this group of new coasters that we see from Europe, and that's the Tutatises, the shortest Carnins, and the which one did we just Voltron? Of this group of newer coasters, not brand new coasters, but newer coasters to this poll in the last couple of years, I feel like Hyperia might be the one that isn't going to hang around for some reason, and I don't know why. I just have that
It it could be.
instinctual belief.
It could be. And you know what's interesting? I thought about it for a while after having ridden Hyperia several times, and by the end of the night when we got our night ride in the back row, which is the place to be, I think, in my opinion.
On most
Um,
coasters.
yeah. To me, I found now some people are gonna some people are gonna think, oh, well, that's great news, and other people are gonna say, oh, well, that's not really a great comparison. Um, it rode like a bigger, faster, a little bit more refined version of Pantheon, but with a lift hill and a big drop instead of the multi-launch.
It's, then you have not sold me at all.
And that's what I'm saying. But if you want to break down like element by element, they both have a big stall. They both have a big vertical drop. They both have that outside bank turn. Pantheon's comes back out. Hyperia's continues to roll into an inversion on the way out, which is super unique. And you get some inversion thrower air time out of that in addition to the hang time. You've got like the dive loop, which I mean, Pantheon has the zero G winder at the beginning. But the best part of Pantheon is the swing launch, really, with that little airtime
With
hill.
the little airtime
Um,
hill.
so, and you've got big moments of airtime on Hyperia as well, but it's a lot faster, or it feels a lot faster because it's a lot bigger. The top speed might be comparable between the two because of the launch on Pantheon, but to me, like, and it's not a great comparison in terms of what it feels like, and
Like to me,
where.
Pantheon might be a top 50 ride for me. Might. It's on that border.
And
So
that's not an end all be all comparison, but when I most rides when you look at them or you ride them, you say, okay, that looks a lot like this, or that feels a lot like this, and maybe it's manufacturer, maybe it's layout, maybe it's style. There always seems to be at least one or two coasters that you compare to. Hyperia, I genuinely felt like I had such a hard time figuring out what I was going to compare it to. And the two rides that I came closest to are where I was like, it feels a little bit like those rides are the elements, like the inversions and stuff, felt like Pantheon, but the airtime and the drop felt like Expedition G-Force, which is a
mhm.
much better comparison historically when you look at this poll. So
Yeah.
if you took the good things from Pantheon and you took some of the good things from Expedition G-Force, which is the height on G-Force, you're really talking about the ejector airtime in a couple of spots. You're talking about the first drop, and then you took the inversions from Pantheon and put that on the back end of like Expedition G-Force's because when Hyperia, you do the twisted drop, which is kind of like G-force, except it goes all the way around, right? And then you do like the Immelman thing, but you roll out of it so that when you're in the back, you're actually going down a drop. Because it rolls out before you start to drop. So if you took like the first drop and the first airtime hill of Expedition G-Force, and then you put like a bunch of Pantheon elements on the back end of it, that's kind of the best I can
Mm.
come up with, which at the end of the day, you get this weird ride that you can't really compare to anything.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't
And
know if
that's
that's
I
not a
think that's
bad
the
thing. It's just
problem.
weird.
I think that's the problem with trying to get people's opinion is they don't know how to compare it to other things. And it just seems like a mishmash of like opinions on it. So I
Yeah.
feel like it's gonna do well here, but I don't know long term where it's gonna end up.
Well, it does beat Asian Ica, so Hyperia does win and move on to the second round here. So now we have this interesting prospect of it going up against the winner of our next matchup, here, which is Hyperion from Energylandia, which now over the last couple of years has solidified its spot, certainly in the top half of this poll. And then it's going up against Fury 325, a former champion from Carowinds. Last year, Hyperion was actually number 9 to Fury 325's number 10. They were 98.5 to 98.41, so extremely close, but Hyperion was one spot higher. And people are thinking it's a 1 year thing, because 74% of the people selected Fury 325 to move on here. So people think Fury 325 will jump back over Hyperion. But it would be interesting to see what Hyperia does against one of those two rides, because those two rides are a little bit more proven than Asian Ica.
Well, exactly. So like, and like Hyperion and Fury, like if you look at the first half of Fury and compare it to Hyperion, I think there's a better comparison there. Um,
Yeah.
but Fury is one of those rides that I feel like people take for granted how good that ride is.
It's 10 years
Um,
old now, right? And people are like, oh, okay, we've been riding that for 10 years. We
exactly.
forget how
Well,
good it is.
the what have you done for me lately? And that's where the recency bias of Thuzies in general bothers me a little bit, where everything new has
Yeah.
got to be better. Everything new has automatically got to be in my top 50. That 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 we'd rather put, mediocre. And I think Pantheon is a perfect example of a mediocre ride. And is Pantheon even in this poll? No, right? Is it? Is it in the next group?
Wait, did Pantheon make? I don't think
Pantheon did not make it.
No, it did.
It's
So,
not.
I mean, that goes to show you it was 15 2 years ago, and then,
Exactly,
in two
exactly.
years
So
it's out. So that's a great
it's one of
example.
those examples of enough people have ridden it, they realize, and people go to the ride first, and everyone proclaims it as their new number one, and then they forget about everything before it, and
And
they
then
start,
everybody after Jim Winslet rides it, and then it's not cool anymore.
and then it's not cool anymore. So, and the problem is people are constant. You might be guilty of this, constantly shifting their top 50. Like, yeah, when you ride a new ride, you should figure out where it goes, but I always look at the totality of my list, and I can do that because it's on a board. I can actually physically look at my list, and I can say, well, I go down at the bottom. I'm like, well, where do I first feel that this should go? And then
Yeah.
I start looking at stuff above it and below it. And it's not just names on a paper. I got the logos, I got the magnets, and
Yeah.
it gives me a better perspective of where things should go. And I don't constantly shift my list. I'm not playing with, oh, I rode this summer, I'm gonna move this up here. Like
Yeah.
and I feel like everyone rides these new rides and it has to be in their top 10 or it has to be in their top 20. And then we forget about rides like Fury because it's 10 years old already. We forget a ride
Yeah.
like Millennium Force that's not even in the top 32 anymore. And it's just and then you start hearing the Steel Vengeance hate out there. And it just annoys me when people sit there and talk. And just because it's new doesn't make it the best. It doesn't have to be the best. And people feel like this need of, oh, I need to say it's the best to say, oh, look at me. And I'm just like, whatever, guys. So anyway, I don't know what the hell I was talking about.
No, I mean, but that's good, right? I mean, you ride a new ride, and a lot of times, like I was saying with Hyperia, you have similar rides that you can compare it to and say, okay, I just rode Iron Gwazi, and
Yeah,
oh, I don't like it quite as much as Steel Vengeance, but I like it better than Iron Rattler, so that gives me a range to put it in, right?
yeah.
And
And there's a
then you can,
reason why you had that already ranked the way it was.
right?
Like people forget that they also ranked these other rides. So were you wrong the first time or are you wrong now?
Yeah, I mean, one thing I do, you said it that I do tend to, when I re-ride a ride for the first time in a while, I do tend to move it around because sometimes you forget over the years that how much you actually like to ride, or
Mhm.
maybe you had a different experience. One thing I don't do pretty much ever is move rides without having reridden them. Like
Yeah.
I don't look at my list 2 years later and say, I don't know what I was thinking there. Like I
Maybe you
generally look
should.
at it and be like, yeah, you know what? That seems right. So I
Oh,
think
that's
that's
funny.
interesting that you brought that up. So yeah, Hyperion versus Fury, really close last year. People buying that Fury is going to come back and beat Hyperion this year after the upset last year. And it does. Fury
Oh,
325
that's actually
knocks off
surprising to me.
Hyperion. So we will get Hyperia versus Fury 325. I wonder if I tricked anybody into thinking I was going to put Hyperia versus Hyperion
Oh,
in the
maybe
second
that
round.
that is something you would do though.
That's absolutely something I would do, and that was part of the plan there to trick people into thinking that's exactly what I was going to do. But nope, Fury 325 and Hyperion instead. Okay, next matchup as we move along here. Schwerdeskairnen from Hansa Park in Germany feels a little bit like a thanks for playing coaster here against
Yeah.
Jurassic World Velocicoaster from Islands of Adventure down there in Orlando. Let's see. Hold on. Do we have to call anybody out here? No, 100% of the folks
Okay.
picking Velocicoaster here, and they are correct. Velocicoaster moves on to the next round in the mock group here. This is becoming quite a stout group all of a
Yeah.
sudden here. With the unknown of Hyperia, but then Fury and Velocicoaster, you've got two former champions there already. And our last matchup is a matchup of two rides that were top 10 last year as well. Last year's number 6, Ride to Happiness from Plopsaland Pan in Belgium, going up against last year's number 3 coaster, Taiga from Linnanmäki in Finland. So, the now in terms of percentages, let's look at that real quick here. Percentages, Taiga was 99.09. Ride to Happiness 98.93. So not a large margin to work with at all there. And in terms of selection, let's see, what do we have here? Let's see what math tells us. Math tells us that 61% went with Taiga versus
Hmm.
39% Ride to Happiness. So people certainly leaning on last year's rankings, it seems, for this, but still not even a two-thirds split, close to a 60-40 split.
Yeah, I don't have much to say on this one. I would tend to just, from what I've heard, feel that Taiga for this poll will probably move on. Even though so many people have talked about Right to Happiness being amazing, I just feel that the people I've talked to, Taiga seems to be the more amazing ride. And I would think Taiga has a lower ridership too than Right to Happiness, right?
It seems that way. I
Yeah.
know a lot fewer people who have ridden Taiga, so
And that might actually work to its advantage too. Here.
that's very, very possible. So the Church of Taiga prevails. Taiga knocks off Ride to Happiness. So we will have Hyperia up against Fury 325 and Velocicoaster going up against Taiga
Well,
in our
this has
next
turned
round.
into a real interesting bracket, hasn't it?
This is a tough group. This is a
Yeah.
tough group. All right, we got one more group to go through tonight, and then we're ready to call. And this one doesn't look quite as formidable, but we still have coasters to eliminate
Yeah.
here. Out of the Tumor group, we've got Skyrush from Hershey Park going up against Shambhala from Portaventura Park in Spain. Skyrush was 24 last year to Shambhala's 31.
Yeah.
Shambhala barely making it in. And the selections here, vast majority, 87% going with Skyrush here.
I think that's a good pick. Did you said you did get on the new Skyrush trains, right? And there wasn't much difference to you?
Yeah, I didn't really feel much of a difference
Yeah.
at all. I mean in terms of the forces, there was no difference. The comfort was a little bit better, but at the end of the day, because it's like the Pantheon, Velocicoaster, Terran style restraints there.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I think it's a good change. I think it improves the ride. Do I think it's like a Ghost Rider Maverick type of thing where it's all of
Yeah,
a sudden going to shoot up a list? Absolutely not.
yeah.
So yeah, people leaning Skyrush here, and they are correct. It is Skyrush. Moving on to the second round here. And another matchup that feels a little bit like a thanks
Yeah.
for playing one. We've got the Battle of Poland. We've got Lech Coaster from Legendia, which was in last year at number 23, which was a pretty darn good showing for that ride, I think. Going up against last year's runner-up, which is Zadra from Energylandia, about an hour down the road in Zator. The big RMC over there. Let's see. Zadra
Something I've
versus
never noticed before is that in
yeah.
the logo it says wooden coaster.
Yeah, and there's some interesting history that Alex was telling me about that. So at some point when they were planning Zadra and they were planning the expansions for Energylandia, at one time it was going to be a topper track coaster. And that was the plan, and they created the logos such that it would be a wooden coaster. Now the signage in the park generally does not say wooden coaster on it. If I remember correctly, most of the signage is just the Zadra logo. But to find something online that's not like over a picture, that's not like over like a
Yeah.
YouTube thumbnail, to find a logo on the internet that was high quality that didn't have the wooden coaster in there was actually really hard to find. So for that purpose and for the sake of irony, I decided to put it in here because should Zadra ever win, I could always say, "Hey, a wood coaster won the steel bracket." Now I
That's
don't.
true. That's true.
So
I just
I don't know that
assume.
that's ever going to happen, but I left that possibility in here so that should it ever happen, I have the ability to say that.
I just assumed the Polacks were too cheap to change the logo.
Well, I mean well, at some point they switched it to a topper or Iron Horse
Yeah.
track to avoid the maintenance, which obviously was probably a good decision as it was anyway, because that thing is
Because the
fast.
damn thing fell down once, right?
Yeah, it got blown over once
Yeah.
or something like that.
It's actually
So
the second Zadra. Zadra 2.
seriously, that was a bad omen. So yeah, thanks for playing Lech Coaster. Better luck next year. Zadra is moving on. We will have Skyrush versus Zadra in the second round. We've got two more to talk about tonight. We've got Fly from Phantasialand in Germany, which was number 17 last year, going up against X2 from Six Flags Magic Mountain in California, which was number 18 last year. So two more rides that were right next to each other last year. Fly was 97.47, X2 was 97.40. So a very, very close margin here. Perhaps one of the most devious matchups of the entire bracket. Um, and again, another 50-50 split on this one here between X2 and Fly, which is not a big surprise considering they were essentially a tie last year.
Yeah, that's not surprising at all. And X2 I feel has had a slow move down over the last few seasons in this poll. Fly is kind of just like there, so it's not like I think a lot of people were hoping a lot more for Fly than what was actually like a lot of people were talking real highly of Fly when it first came out. Once again, as always, but that one's kind of settled into like, hey, it's a pretty good ride, but not like top tier, like winning a championship belt type. So I don't know. This is a flip of the coin. I think X2 is a fine ride. I think X2's always been criminally underranked.
Agreed. We agree on that.
So I wouldn't be surprised either
I still
way.
have X2 in my top 20 out of, over 700 some odd
Yeah,
steel
I still have
coasters
X2 in my top 10, so
or 800 steel coasters now. I still have X2 in my top 20.
we're
So
happy for you.
yeah, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. Well, and I go off percentages there. I mean, with top 20 out of 800, that's top 2%, 2.5%.
Are you hitting any milestones on this trip or no? Nothing.
1,000.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Oh, wow. So we'll
Don't know
have
what
to
it's gonna be yet. We have to see how
we'll
things
have to
work
throw a
out.
party or something. That's a big number, 1,000.
Yeah.
Unattainable for most normal.
It is a big number. It's 4 digits.
It's like what Robert says all the time. That's a big number.
That's a big number,
That's a
Robertson.
big
Yeah, so that's good. Okay, so yes, moving on to the second round here is X2 from Six Flags
Oh,
Magic Mountain. So we do see a little bit of a shift there. X2 does seem to leapfrog fly. So that'll be interesting here. Final matchup of the night, one that has kind of like how El Toro and Outlaw Run seem to become a tradition on the wood side of things over the years. It seems like Expedition G-Force versus Conda has become
yeah,
a bit of a tradition here. Remember, 2 years ago, Conda surprised almost everybody by being number 4 and making it to the
yeah.
final four, upsetting Expedition G-Force along the way. Last year, we put them up against each other. Everybody picked Conda. And then Expedition G-Force ended up being number 8. Conda dropped to number 11, and everybody was wrong. Expedition G-Force was 98.51 last year. Conda was 98.31. So they were still extremely close. So if you take 2 years of history, it doesn't tell you what to do here because you'll get a 50-50 split. People going for Expedition G-Force here by a ratio of 65%. So 65-35 people going. So the people who went off of the history last year picked Conda. They were wrong. They're deciding to go with history this year and pick Expedition G-Force. Will they be wrong again this year, or will G-Force stay above Conda?
So did you put them together because it's going to flip again? Or did you put them together thinking that people think that you put them together because it's going to flip again, but it's actually going to stay the same?
Or am I just not that smart?
No, you spent many hours planning this. So
These are the types of things that I have to weigh when I'm deciding.
Amazon would have their robotics already if you
Or
spent.
am I never going to put them together again, and this is the tiebreaker?
Oh, maybe the rubber match, as you will.
The rubber match,
Um,
right?
I don't know. I have no idea. I have no idea.
2 years ago, the winner was Conda. Last year, the winner was Expedition G-Force. This year, the winner, moving on to the second round, is Conda from Wallaby,
Oh,
Belgium. So it does flip-flop once again. So people are probably very upset with me at this point, once again, if they weren't already, but that's okay. Leave your profanity in the comments if you want or whatever. Send me a nasty email and I'll promptly ignore it. So we've got Skyrush going up against Zadra, and we'll have X2 going up against Conda in the second round of the tumor group here. And that's gonna wrap up the steel bracket here, the first round for both the wood and the steel of this year's Thrilling 32. So I don't know, Andy, what are your thoughts here on
there's
what we've
there's some
seen?
interesting matchups here. I think the wood is kind of like really kind of like revealing itself at this point, but in the steel side, there's a lot of question marks still out there. A lot
There
more than I
really
thought
is.
there would be moving into this section.
It kind of felt like we would get the busy work out of the way, and
Yeah.
like a path would sort of become clear for some of these rides. And the path is not so clear for a lot of these rides because what we've got Fury, Taiga, and Velocicoaster all in the same group. You've
Mhm.
got what Iron Gwazi and a ride like Voltron and Airy Force One in a group there. Oh, by the way, Untamed is in that group too.
Yeah.
So the final four, at least certainly on the steel side, is all but assured. There's a lot of question
Oh,
marks.
there's a lot of question marks still out here. So, um, it's gonna be interesting.
Yeah,
It's gonna be
so
interesting to see where things actually end up here. Maybe not interesting, maybe infuriating might be the word.
well, maybe. I don't know. We'll see what goes on here. We still got a couple
Yeah.
rounds to go, but as always, we thank you guys for joining us and participating in the Thrilling 32 and the Ride Warrior Choice Awards, the longest continuously running awards program in the theme park industry. And we're very proud of that, Andy.
No, it's pretty cool that that
Might
that
be
we have
delayed,
that.
but we're still doing it.
Yeah, hey, you know what? No one really. no one's doing anything anyway right now. So like Siren's Curse isn't open yet. Top Thrill
The new
2
rides aren't open yet.
struggles. Like Big Bad Wolf just opened up. Like, okay, like, so we're still in the zone of, you know what, we'll get this out. Don't worry.
That's
So
right.
we got a few more rounds here to determine the ultimate champion, and we don't have a belt either. I don't know where you have the belt. Never
It's
bought
somewhere.
one. So still working on that piece as well. So maybe we'll just wait to see what happens this year to get a new belt. Who
That's
knows?
right.
So, as always, thank you for joining us here. I'm, of course, Andy Robarchek from Chicago, Illinois.
And I'm Danny Miller from Binghamton, New York.
Right on, Red Warriors.
See you next time, guys. Thanks.